Uh, we'll pick up again with my father, so this will be session number 2. I've watched the other tape and realized how awkward it was, and so I'm not at all happy with it, but uh, I think one thing stood out. It's critical in order to talk about my dad that you have to talk about the family first. You have to have an overview of the dynamics in that family, as well as the work situation in order to even begin to understand them. And there's nothing unique about this. All families have their, I don't know, lives and things happen within that environment. Now, I'm going to make this really brief and an overview. I just want you to try and have some concept of how the environment was that my father worked in, that my mother lived in socially, and I think then you'll understand some of the characteristics and some of the things that transpired. Okay, a brief overview. My dad was born in 1870 in Wisconsin, along with two other siblings, Emma and Bernice. Now, my grandfather moved to Colorado shortly after my great-grandfather passed away. And he was a very young man when he did so. Records are a little hazy, at least to this point. Hopefully that the efforts that I'm going to try to make, and I know a couple of the children are interested in assisting with, will, shed a lot of detail. And then you could come back to this tape and get a lot more out of it. I probably will read from some of my notes. So anyway, he moved to Colorado. I know he worked for the U.S. Post Office. I know he worked in the mercantile business. My recollection is it was Longmont. In the mercantile business, the story in the family goes that he worked with another gentleman by the name of J.C. Penney. And it was J.C. Penney's idea that he and my grandfather should open their own mercantile store or stores. And my grandfather opted out and went to Sheridan, where he arrived in the late 1890s, and he set up, opened a mercantile store. Now, in the meantime, in Colorado, he married Lucy Rhodes. The Rhode family, we have an extensive family history on. They date way back in our country. Quite interesting reading, as I understand it, currently updated. His sister, Emma would follow him at some point to Sheridan, and she would become a partner in the mercantile business. Nevertheless, he proved to be a very successful businessman. He became involved in all of the activities in Sheridan. Well, that would include things like founding the First National Bank, Sheridan Flour Mills, great deal of ranching on and off with different partners. And he opened additional stores, primarily the one in Buffalo, which I think history is going to show was designed for his brother to take over. Now, Emma's going to have several children, Harvey being the had the most impact on the family and the family history. He would be the same age as my dad. Then my dad and his sisters never got along, and probably because, I don't know why. I simply don't know why they didn't get along. But let's see. Peg would go on to marry I. Cole, and he would go into the Sheridan Mills and become president and whatnot of that entity and do very well. He was also, I understand, known for his extracurricular activities with the feminine world. Peg, I think, as a result, became a very heavy drinker. She became an alcoholic. Ultimately, she's going to die from cancer in the liver. They had one son, Bill. Bill Cole, as my cousin, is currently the cousin we talk about and want to visit because he has a vineyard in Chile. Bernice would marry excuse me, and they would have several children. Her husband worked in the store as an accountant. Harvey would come back from college. You'll find he's, I believe, a Pomona graduate with a degree in mathematics. He would also become accustomed to an imbibing. Now, Harvey and his wife Edith had several children, one of whom would be Nancy. Nancy would also go to Pomona, but she would come back and she would be employed in Stevens Freiberger, the mercantile business. So here's my father. In the middle of a second generation business that had survived the Depression, had grown, prospered. My grandfather was, you know, the president and principal owner. His sister Emma would be a force to be reckoned with by anybody, anytime, any place. And I know my dad was not thrilled to be around them. So you have this big mix of first, second, and third generation working in a single, fairly large mercantile business. The mercantile business was successful up until the 50s, when we were finished with the war and actually embarked on what would be the technology revolution. Coming at us would be television, more, modern cars, airplanes, transportation. The whole dynamics of our culture and society were changing, and consequently, the mercantile business actually just faded into the background, and there was no concerted effort by the family to update it and bring it into speed with the world around us. I think that gives you a little bit of knowledge about how he grew up, or where he was, and where my mother was. I mean, her role in all this was clearly trying to keep peace in the family. My dad didn't get along with his sisters, and they used to make him furious. So you can see why Story was an escape. And we tend to think of that as in terms of the war and the problems of the war, but in reality, as much as anything, I think it was a way to, remove yourself from this situation in the store. So essentially you had my grandfather and his sister, who were hard workers. You had my dad, he was a hard worker. And then the family all around him was essentially alcoholics. And so that really made it difficult. Given that information and the fact that we have, if we can get to them and get them organized, substantial number of documents which were being accumulated for genealogy, but contain detailed history information. So I wish you carpe diem, and we'll get together again soon.